Hey up everyone. Well, today I'm going to look at an ongoing and ridiculous mess of inaction about the now infamous KTM 790 and 890 camshaft wear issues. I've kept quiet until now on this point because without more real facts there was just too much conjecture. Even the so-called statement from KTM was then summarily dismissed by them as a fake document that hadn't come from them at all, even though they admitted most of the facts were right. So where to start? Well, to give anyone who doesn't know a bit of background, there has been a crapshoot for what seems like forever now about the self-destructive cams on the various 790 and 890 engined bikes. Some talk about cam lobe wear, there are others where the cam seems to eat into the head itself, and the list of complaints has gone on and on for years now. All of that time, we have had complete refusal by KTM to take any responsibility or acknowledge any possibility of a design failure. Most of the issues were on pre-2021 790 Adventure and Duke models, but there have been similar claims affecting later KTM 790 and 890 Adventure and Duke models, along with the Husqvarna and Norden 901s. Every man and his dog has a theory about what's causing the premature wear, so I've been watching and listening until I figured out what I think is the real story and what has really been happening and why KTM may have dealt with it in the way they have. That will lead us on to another story, but it all takes time. Without wanting to sound too biblical, in the beginning, Motorcycle News contacted KTM UK about the issues being reported, and it was disclosed that the problem was believed to have been caused by poor oil feed pressure on pre-2020 models and overly narrow camshaft followers on pre-2021 bikes. Now come on KTM. Which is it? Or was it more than that? After contacting KTM again, KTM UK acknowledged the issue but said it had only occurred in 59 bikes in the UK, and they did tell MCN that the camshafts used on the LC8C platform have no inherent defect, and that the affected components meet the technical specification for their intended use. So they obviously didn't intend for you to ever start or run any of the bikes with an LCA engine then. They went on to say the hardness of the camshafts and the width of the finger followers, as well as lubrication of these components, was all well within tolerance. KTM went on to say that the issue had already been resolved by introducing wider finger followers for the 2021 model and an additional oil screen for the 2020 models. Now tell me, how do wider finger followers solve an oil feed pressure issue? That oil screen is a story of more incompetence in its own right, but I will come to that later. This was all done not to solve or in acknowledgement of the problem, but in KTM's words, to improve the overall performance and quality of the engine. Yes, right, Mr. Pierre. Both innovations apparently simultaneously resolved all of the contributing factors, solving the problem completely. Or not, as you will have heard. And this is where many affected people are rightly angry. They are all well out of pocket after buying a new KTM and then realising the KTM guarantee has more holes in it than a spray nozzle at a car wash. We all know now that the LC8 camshaft issue is much larger than KTM have ever acknowledged, and it still hasn't been resolved. A Facebook group called KTM Failed Camshafts was set up, and over 9,000 members began posting their stories of complaints, complete with pictures of the LC8 engine's camshaft issues. It appeared that public opinion got KTM's attention, because in a post apparently made by KTM on the group's page, the Austrian company said they would like to extend their apologies to the people who feel affected by this camshaft topic. They also said they see and hear all of the feedback, whether it's online, via authorised KTM dealers or simply through community chatter. But they still didn't accept there was a problem. That would cost them too much. The bean counters at Pierre and Mobility said so. Anyway, as a result, KTM said it's been in communication with its dealers on how to inspect camshafts if customers report issues on the 2018, 2019 and 2020 KTM 790 Duke and 790 Adventure. Because it didn't arrive until 2021, the Norden slipped past this, but regardless, as far as the corporate response was concerned, the issue was over. So KTM acknowledged customer dissatisfaction, but still wouldn't accept there was a real problem. Does that sound familiar? I'm sorry we made you feel that way is very different to a true sorry we messed up, in my view. They went on, saying investigations have shown that a large proportion of the camshafts that are the subject of the complaints are in perfect working order. In these cases, it's not a question of wear, but mostly just discoloration or run marks that have formed on running surfaces of cams or on the bearing points of the shafts, and that these can easily be removed by cleaning. Really? They go on to say, the overall quality and integrity of the camshaft itself is not a problem. So, it's not their fault, somehow. Amazing how a bit of discoloration can make an engine run so badly, eh? Interestingly, KTM then went on to recommend that if owners experience certain symptoms like poor starting, clearly audible or unusual running noises from the engine, or noticeably reduced engine power, they should take their machines to an authorised KTM dealer. Why? So they can clean off the discoloration? Once at the authorised KTM dealer, if the cams are found to be damaged, KTM says the cost of replacing the camshafts will be borne by KTM under a goodwill scheme. Note, not the guarantee. But, and here is the kicker, if the dealer decides that there is no issue, you, the customer, are then liable for the cost of the strip and rebuild, and you get the same engine issues back. They did say that for those who have already paid for replacement camshafts from an authorised KTM dealer, KTM will re-examine new goodwill applications through the authorised KTM dealer network. In KTM's exact words, subsequent goodwill may be considered. Note, may be considered, not will be sorted at our cost. So basically, they are still making no promises at all, except to fit an oil strainer that makes the problem even worse. Remember, at this point, all the problems have been solved, says KTM and Pierre and Mobility. Then they go on again. As part of the continuous development of our products and to improve the quality and wear behaviour of the engine, we have now introduced wider rocker arms from model year 2021. So wait, which is it again? The rocker arms or the oil feed? And why is it, if that was the real solution, that 790 and 890 engine bikes are still having the same problems? Now fairly well established on the 890 and Husky 901 too. The exact wording was, I believe, if customers have already ordered a camshaft replacement for affected models from our authorised KTM dealers in the past, KTM will re-examine new goodwill applications through the authorised KTM dealer network. If the conditions explained in the statement and in the communication to the authorised KTM dealer network are met, subsequent goodwill may be considered. So again, we get corporate spiel that says, I'm not accepting that there's a problem, but. And then we get to the next update. KTM representatives, and for that bit read Pierre Mobility, the parent company, stated that the Facebook post claimed to be posted by KTM was not posted by the company, but was generally accurate. Really? So are we just being fed more from the back end of the bull? Or can we surmise that if it wasn't an official KTM announcement, but was accurate, that there is now a whistleblower? Otherwise, how could the information be so accurate? KTM still says that only 2018 to 2020 790 Adventure and Dukes are affected, and later models aren't. Therefore, no KTM 790s after 2021, no KTM 890s, and no Husqvarna Norden 901s should have the cam issues, right? So why have they? Why are the 890 engines still doing the same thing? Still, the official response is that if your bike has one of the noted symptoms, you should have it checked by an authorised KTM dealer. The dealer will then inspect the cams, and if the cams are found to be defective, KTM will cover the cost of the part and labour regardless of the fact that the bike's warranty has already expired. However, if the cams are found to be in satisfactory condition, the owner will be responsible for the labour to check them. Now, although there have been many conversations about the cams, cam followers and the various hardening issues, I've always thought that the main issue was indeed likely to be the oil supply to the head. If you look inside, as you can see here, there is just one tiny gallery for the main oil feed. It's just minuscule, and that's only the first and most basic of the observations. Here I will turn to someone who has much more engineering knowledge than me and tell you that Matt, the dirty garage guy, has been doing a far deeper dive into the issue. What he has discovered is fascinating on many levels, both personal and corporate. I also want to give a shout out to ADV Charlie too, and you should go and see his story. I will link it in the description. But first, let us think about KTM's first fix, the oil strainer. As you've seen, we have a very small, narrow gallery feeding oil up to the head. Now, I don't care how good your workmanship is. Any engine, especially a new engine, will shed swarf as the engine components move against each other. So you have a known problem with oil feeds and a narrow gallery to the head, but you decide to put an oil strainer in that small gallery. What bright spark thought up that idea? In no time at all, the tiny filter screen will be blocked by swarf and the oil feed killed even more. Unless you take the head off to replace it every few hundred miles, of course. How did an engineer come up with that solution, I hear you say? Well, the easy answer to that is, I don't think they did. No self-respecting engineer would do something so obviously ridiculous. So who made that decision? Bean counters, perhaps? Did they work out it would cost them less to announce this as a fix rather than fund a recall? Just push the problem further down the line and hope people forget. I will let you answer that one. With any big company like Priera Mobility Group, it will always come down to the money. It may be that the KTM announcement was from someone inside KTM, but that it was then overruled by the parent company trying to distance themselves from the problem. Either way, I think it's pretty obvious that the information came from somewhere within the KTM company. Could that whistleblower be one of the disgruntled engineers or other disillusioned staff? And this brings me to the second point of today's video, which I was already doing as a separate video, but it becomes relevant and could be the whole context here. Because Priera Mobility and the KTM Group recently announced a whole raft of things to the shareholders, the crux being that they are very unlikely to show a pre-tax profit for the last financial year, and that is already having major implications. If they can contrive a situation where their design is proven to work, and that the problem is in fact with the manufacturing of the engines, then the corporate responsibility falls elsewhere, and we all know that the fault would be left on CF Moto's doorstep. But back to the engine. Here you can see quite clearly how the internal oil ways on this engine just don't line up. Cross-drilling like this is always a difficult one, and with such tight tolerances, it's easy to make mistakes. Remember, mistakes cost money. But whose money? Matt goes on to talk about the disruption to the oil flow in much more detail and with various nuances, which I do thoroughly recommend you going to watch. But in easy terms, each of these cross-drilled oil ways is creating a choke point, and when oil flows slowly, as well as an obvious drop in immediate oil pressure, any deposits in the oil are left to settle more. Those deposits then build up, and the oil flow is reduced further in an ever-increasing spiral of doom. On and on it goes until the cams eat themselves. Add a screen filter into the circuit, and unless it is a very high-capacity unit, you are asking for trouble. Needless to say, KTM's tiny screen isn't going to do anything but bad things to your head. It is, and always was, a ridiculous idea that just compounds the problem. So where does that leave owners? At the mercy of KTM dealerships, who have had a less than stellar reputation in the past, and are now managed independently of KTM by the parent company, the BAREBONESMC Group. The same company that is moving more manufacturing to China and India and laying off staff in Europe to improve product quality. And the same company that throughout has refused to acknowledge any responsibility for the issue. To be perfectly honest, I think that it's more likely that the tolerances needed to match the cross-drilled oil ways was too hard to achieve, and that either CF Moto or BAREBONESMC just said, "Oh well, it'll be okay." But with such a complex corporate structure and shareholders to pay from a smaller bucket, who do you think the winners and losers will be? The losers will be the buyers and the dealers that are good enough to be honest. It certainly won't be the BAREBONESMC Group. To hear more about the financial woes within the KTM Group and their implications, keep your ears open, as the next video up will tell a fuller story. It doesn't sound good for Gas, and Husqvarna may be not so far behind them. And no one is talking about the MV Agusta situation at all, as usual. Thanks for watching, and sorry it wasn't better news today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. If you got this far and haven't already, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing does help a lot, and it means you get to find out first when our regular updates, news, views and other videos go out. We do have the best and most respectful motorcycle community on YouTube too. I thank all of you for that. From the people who have been here from the start to the ones who have joined us recently, you are the people who have helped make the channel what it is today. Remember to check out the other real biker channels linked on the community page too. Together we are stronger. Please share the video on any forums you use and with anyone you think will be interested if you could. That's one of the things that helps the most. It kicks the YouTube algorithm into gear and helps to get the channel out there to new viewers. For the best biker t-shirts and other merchandise made by bikers for bikers, you can visit the website or the Redbubble shop linked in the description below too. There are other exciting motorcycle adventures and other stories from the shed and beyond on the website too, so why not grab a cuppa and take a look around. You won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. I hope you get some great riding in, and remember, keep your spanners close and your keys even closer. Ride free, everyone!